Isaac and Tiona. No mask, just us. Let's go.
What's going on, everybody? This your boy Isaac, aka Iceman of the Under No Conditions podcast. How's everybody doing today? We're gonna get right to it. Question: what does it cost if you don't make the decision? That's the question. Most of the time, oftentimes, and many times, we often make the decision based on circumstances, feelings, and many other factors. However, not making a decision sometimes cost us dearly. And I'm not talking about in the aspect of really not making a decision. I'm talking about in the aspect of making the decision can cost us something. Let's talk about our professional life. You have a pretty decent job. Supervisor's pretty much okay. However, this particular time or this particular moment within the day, your clients, they're really pushing the buttons. They're really pressing the buttons. Oftentimes, if we're not careful, we will allow our feelings to get in the way of how we interact, which causes us to make a decision oftentimes can hurt us more than can help us. Because when we're in our feelings, oftentimes we hear, however, we do not listen. They are not the same thing. Listening gives you an opportunity to absorb the information logically and non emotionally. It gives you an opportunity to really hear the information clearly. And as you processing this information, it begins to allow you to be able to decipher. I'm going to say decipher a response that's respectful, that's logical, and that can work for many parties. Oftentimes, when we make a decision out of our feeling, the first thing that comes out of our mouth is the first thing that comes out of our mouth. And many times, after it's said and done, we sit back and we ask ourselves, or we may even say to ourselves, I didn't even have to make that decision. I didn't even have to say it that way. And then what happens is that grown folks sincerely apologize. Now, how do we get to that point? Most, many, and oftentimes, I'm guilty of it too. We bring our problems wherever we go. We bring our problems into situations where our problems often dictate how we feel about the current situation that we're in. And logically, what's happening is that we're not at an emotional place or in a healthy emotional space where we can separate the two, because this problem may be outside of where I am. However, I'm bringing that emotional concept. It's like I'm playing tag. I'm in one situation, I'm bringing in another situation, and I'm bringing both of those situations in together and make them work. But oftentimes they don't work. One thing I've had to learn, because I am a guy that loved confrontation, didn't care what came out of my mouth. I didn't care who I hurt. I didn't care how people felt about what I said, because it's what I said. And oftentimes I remained in situations that I thought was healthy. Unfortunately, they weren't healthy for me emotionally. And I had to learn. I had to learn to sit still. I had to learn to listen. I had to learn to pause. I had to learn how to think, and I had to learn how to choose my battles. I learned one thing that has helped me through many of my adult years. And as difficult as it is, oftentimes this is a skill that most of us are going to have to learn. We're going to have to think for somebody else and think for ourselves at the same time. Now, for some, that skill may be easy, but for many, that's a very difficult skill because we become entangled in our own emotions and in our own feelings when oftentimes we don't even have to. And many times based off of unhealthy belief systems, learned and taught behaviors that we acquire over a long period of time or throughout our lifetime that we integrate into our daily living. And oftentimes and many times, those belief systems really don't work. And many times we don't see that they don't work. So when I'm talking about making the decision that doesn't cost you. And many times we make decisions that cost us, that oftentimes we have to apologize for. We have to rethink. And yes, I believe in learning from your mistakes. But how many times are we going to make decisions, or you going to make decisions, or even myself going to make decisions based on how I feel that's going to continue to bring me the same outcome, and then I become comfortable with that outcome. And oftentimes that's the real issue. We make decisions out of our emotions that we become so comfortable with that we really believe that that is the right way to make decisions. Our belief systems has taught us that making these decisions keep us alive. It allows us to survive. And many times we're making decisions out of survival versus making decisions to learn how to live. Not only live with the circumstances of life and living on life terms, but living in an emotional space that we can be comfortable in. Many times, a lot of people don't get to that place. Oftentimes, you see grown adults, as soon as an emotion strikes or they feel like their belief system has been challenged, or they feel like whatever's happening at that time don't fit in the mold of what they're doing, they react. And oftentimes that reaction is critical. And most of the time we don't even realize that the decisions that we make in those times, they just not affect us. They affect our foundation. And oftentimes we don't realize a lot of decisions that we make until years later, and we look at it now, we're in a position where maybe we have matured and we start asking ourselves the questions that we need to ask ourselves. And if you look back, it's because a lot of the decisions that you made, you didn't make those decisions logically, non-emotionally. You didn't think those decisions through long enough in that process that would have put you in a better situation or a better position. I know I have. I got into situations where I didn't care who it affected. I didn't care how it affected me. The only thing I worried about was was the outcome going to be the way I wanted the outcome to be for me. And as you age and as you mature, you realize that, hey, Isaac, you kind of selfish. because the world and society and life don't evolve around how you feel and how you think things are supposed to be. Unfortunately, I had to learn that lesson. And one thing that I've learned how to do when I talk about pausing, sometimes it's just sitting still. It's not about reading a book. It's not about, you know, anything other than just sitting still and evaluating me, not evaluating what has happened, but evaluate the decisions that I am making that continue to put me in these same circumstances. And then I get frustrated and I continue to ask myself, why these things keep happening to me? Why am I staying in this destructive cycle? And this destructive cycle is based on the decisions that I'm making based on my emotions and how I'm feeling about the situation at the time that it's happening. When something is uncomfortable for many people, they make unhealthy decisions. They make decisions thinking that they're going to disrupt that uncomfortability. However, oftentimes it it makes that uncomfortability worse. Think about it. Think about some of the decisions that you have made in your life when you were uncomfortable or unsure, and look at what it has cost you. And when you look back on it, you would probably say to yourself as a mature adult, man, I could have just paused. I could have just thought about the situation and I could have made a different decision. Oftentimes, when we're in those situations, ego plays a major role in the decisions that we make, not just for ourselves, for people around us. We get so stuck and hung up on how people look at us, how they feel about us, and how we're being validated in that moment. Because oftentimes we get into a situation, and I know I have, and we know we could have done better, but we're turning to people to validate what we did and how we felt so we can feel better about that unhealthy decision that we made. I call it changing the narrative so I can feel better. And oftentimes, when you really look at it, it's called manipulation. Because I done got into a situation, you were there, she was there. Was I right? What you would have done? You would have done the same thing. And most of the time, we are around people that are so similar to us and afraid and are afraid to not validate or to check us. They'll go along with our madness. And that keeps us stuck also. Life are going to bring you challenges. Decisions are part of your foundation in growing and moving forward. What I've learned is oftentimes for me, I don't make a decision. If I can't make a decision in that moment, I've learned how to say, let me think about it. One, and two, I know how to say no. Because saying those two things allows me to back out of the situation and without making a hasty decision based on how I'm feeling. Now I can take the time out and I can ask myself, Isaac, how are you feeling? What do you think about that decision? How are you making a decision, or how is that decision going to affect you later? Are you going to be comfortable with making that decision? And I've also learned to say to people, I'm not comfortable making that decision. Or this is my favorite one. That's not my decision to make. You need to make that decision. Because I'm also guilty of getting hung up in making decisions for other people And when it doesn't work, guess what? They are so comfortable with blaming me, and it also removes the accountability on themselves because now they can point the finger at you, they can point the finger at me. That's a hard lesson I had to learn, and that's part of that decision making. And I had to learn that. So when people ask me questions about a specific issue or specific topic, oftentimes I'll ask them, how are they feeling about the situation? Because I need to be clear about where you coming from. Because oftentimes, depending on what's going on with me, and if I process it at the time, or I might be in a space where I'm comfortable and I'm good with myself, I might not even give you no advice. I might tell you that I'm sorry, but I'm not in no place to make that decision. You gonna have to make that decision. And if you do that often enough around the people that you look at as being associates or your friends, you know what's gonna happen? You're gonna wind up and you're gonna see them dropping off like flies. Because now you have put yourself in a position to be not just an asset for yourself, access versus a liability. Now I value me. I also value the situation. However, I've come to a place where now, whatever the situation is, I can go to it with both eyes open and a clear mind. I understand that I got some things that's going on in my life right now. And guess what? I did bring them to work, but right now I need to put that to the side. I need to open my ears and I need to shut my mouth and I need to access this situation, assess this situation. And oftentimes, if you assess the situation properly, you won't have to make a decision anyway because it's not your decision to make. So, yes, learn how to make the decision. Don't be afraid to make the decision. However, understand emotionally where you are when you're making that decision because it will cost you. Thank you for allowing me into your life today. Myself, Tiana White. She'll be back with us soon. She's handling her business of the Under No Conditions podcast. You guys can continue to email us. We love I love your feedback. For you guys that give us feedback on YouTube, I appreciate it. All the shares, all the likes, I really appreciate it. I thank everyone from the bottom of my heart. And from myself and the Under No Conditions family, we love you guys. Remember, it's not just about you. And with that, we out.